Okay, new video. Call of Duty's gone from 5v5 to 4v4 in the competitive league. Now, I'm making this video because I see some disinformation on Twitter, and some people don't really understand why this has happened, why we're at 5v5, but that's the news, and I'll break some of it down for you with some context. So, context first. Call of Duty Esports went to 5v5 a couple of years ago. I can't remember the exact date of the announcement. It's irrelevant. But we went there and were given the official reason for it, being that they wanted to bring it more in line with Publix. Obviously, Publix went to 5v5. Then we went into Modern Warfare, and Publix were back to 6v6, and we're still at 5v5. A little bit of information if you didn't know it. There was apparently at least a conversation, or it had been pushed from some direction to go to 6v6 for competitive. Thank God it did not. Fortunately, we stayed at 5v5 and now back to 4v4. The reasons that it is better, in my opinion, are several. One of which being it is easier for a spectator to watch when engagements mean more. In a 5v5 scenario, and you've probably noticed in a lot of the games, it is just trade after trade. Individual kills don't mean anything. Positioning means less. That means it's harder to break down, it's harder to get deep into strategy. You just end up watching the trades. And I'm sure if you go into any hard point, if you just watch trade, you don't know who's coming out because everybody's just slide cancelling into it and jumping in. It doesn't really mean anything. Also, in terms of positioning, it means you have to kind of be more willing to sacrifice. You make a bigger play by yourself when you don't have to fight as many people, placing an emphasis more on individual plays and how that relates to the team. This is better for spectators to understand the game and see how it goes down. It's better for players as it's less chaotic and more able to do strategies and influence the game from each player's perspective and the team in strategy-wise. And it's better for casters because it's obviously easier to break down the game when you're not just screaming, oh my god, he's traded 8,000 things, right? Lots of reasons why this is better. There are other reasons why this may have occurred. One of which being cost cutting. The salary cap or luxury tax, because that's its official name, in which the teams all have about 1.5 million and a bit to buy players, and if they go over that, they have to basically double it and give it to the teams outside, right? So they end up paying more money if they go over this cap. I don't know whether that's going to be lowered. I imagine it would be because it doesn't make a ton of sense to basically inflate salaries by another 20% this year. So I think it's going to go down. That would make the most sense to me. It's a good cost cutting. You know, COVID has obviously hit a lot of people quite hard. And I think, you know, the orgs and franchises themselves, it kind of makes sense in that regard. It's not the only reason, but it is a good reason. 5v5 is too chaotic. It has been too chaotic. And while I endorse players being supported by the league, I do know that the inflation of salaries has made it less of an inviting prospect to future investors. It is an awful lot of money. But what does this 4v4 mean going forward? Obviously, it does mean that the teams, which have consisted of, until this point, 5 players and 2 subs on salaries, will be going to 4-on-1. I believe that is the numbers I've been told. 4 players, 1 sub. Not confirmed, unfortunately. That's just one of the things I've heard when I heard this came about. And obviously this, you know, allows an awful lot of roster mania to go on. The biggest negatives are for the teams that didn't want to change anything. You know, probably like, as you've seen in the thumbnail, the Dallas Empire, who recently won the Call of Duty League Cup or Championship or whatever you would like to call it. Obviously, they don't want to change the team. They have a winning team, and now they're going to have to kick a world champion out their door or put them on the sub bench. Neither of which are particularly enticing. And for me, the other bad news is the fact there are no expansion teams this year, which means more pro players will be moving down the ladder into challengers. It is a large drop-off in terms of supported players by the league. And I know what you're saying. I just said something about, you know, the salaries need to come down a little bit to be more sustainable. It's not the same. I think, if I'm being honest, and I won't go into the Challenger stuff now, Challengers needs to be overhauled. I have some ideas for that. I'm going to make a video about it. But Challengers has to drastically change, in my opinion, to make this more viable now. It's much more important. There will be an abundance of talent in that division, which can't play in the Pro League. Which, realistically, is massive, you know. Some of the biggest names may either retire because Challengers is not sustainable for them, or they may just have to just sit in there and not get the exposure, not realistic, and maybe just peter out the last of their career because they're not able to make it back up. We don't really know how the franchise is going to be scouting so far. And especially with the emphasis on AMs at this point, it's a big worry for a lot of players. And I'm sure there are subs right now, or the 5th worst player in each team is in full-on panic mode, knowing that realistically, from being a salaried member of the league, which is quite significant, to going down to Challenge Division, the drop-off is astronomical. And I do mean astronomical. I know for a fact that Team War, you know, the winners of the challenges in Europe, I believe for a good part of the year will be paid basically either nothing or next to nothing. I haven't confirmed it until their sponsors picked up something. But it was a ridiculous drop-off, bearing in mind that I do believe that the average salary in the league currently is somewhere along the lines of 10 to 12,000 a month. Pretty big drop-off. And obviously this is something that everybody now has to look at. It means that all the teams are going to be looking to either drop players or pick them up. Roster mania was already going to be big anyway as they re-sign. And here's one thing you might not have known. From what I understand, there are very few multi-year contracts. I don't think that's the standard. I believe the standard is 1+1, in which that the players sign up for a 1-year contract, and teams have an option to renew that for an extra year. It is not guaranteed. There is not guaranteed money, right? So players who think they're on a multi-year deal probably aren't, and now the leagues and the franchises have a really good reason to drop a player. It's going to happen. We are going to see an absolute bloodbath in terms of contract negotiations and players just willing to get back into a league team because there are less spots now. And truthfully, I see a lot of people talking about they think 5v5 is better. I think I saw a tweet from somebody I do respect called Silly, who was on my podcast recently, and he said, "Oh, I think 5v5 is more exciting." I don't think it's more exciting. After, you know, casting Call of Duty competitive for a decade, I know for a fact that it is much harder to follow, and it engages me less to just see massive trades go in. I'm sure you can see the run-up, and you only have to go watch some of the clips where casters basically stop saying names, or only say names. You know, Clayster, Sim, and just trading. And trading isn't great. You don't get the, you know, how good that player is. You just know that people are throwing themselves into it because that's all they can do. So I think realistically, you know, this is a very big move for the league. No more expansion slots this year, which is always going to be disappointing because I know people enjoy those. But also the fact that these teams are going to be broken up and rapidly changed. Not the only change we've got coming, of course. You know, the PS5 is looming around the corner. That is another upgrade and another barrier to entry for these teams. And of course, speaking of challenges, as we have done just a few minutes ago, also challenger teams will be breaking up, and there will now be a deeper pool of good teams in challengers, simply because all these players will be left from teams and make new teams, which will also be good. So it is certainly one of the biggest shake-ups. I mean, it's actually a bigger shake-up from 5v5 to 4v4 than 4v4 to 5v5. You can basically just pick up a player going into 5v5, and there are plenty of free agents. We saw it, I think, in Red Reserve, where they just picked up Bance and he came in. So this is something we knew coming. I saw someone say in my Twitter feed actually about, oh, this is, you know, they've, you know, blindsided the orgs and the franchise and the players. I hate to tell you this, but it has been known for quite a while. I've known it for quite a while, and I was tempted to say something about it, but I know that these pointless breaking news like that for no reason, if that makes sense. Like if I think I need to say something about context, you know, because it seriously affects people or it's kept secret and it may be detrimental in some way. This is in no way detrimental. The players and the franchises knew this was coming. And now it's something they've agreed to. I don't know if they've all agreed to it. I don't know. Hastro, I think he said something about not agreeing to it, but it is something that is now happening. It is possibly one of the biggest changes from, you know, in Call of Duty year to year that we've had. Because who do you kick? The scenario, take Dallas, for instance. Who do you kick? Clay, Krim. That's what a lot of people are now saying, you know. Maybe one of them has to go. Do they fit in the format in the team? Can you have two of them in a 4v4 team? I mean, obviously you can. And obviously it has worked in the past, but people are wondering, you know, well, who do you kick then? Shotzi? Illy? Who's going? Who is leaving? Because one of them is, because they're all too good to be a sub in that team. All of them. So where do they go? And you don't want to let any of those incredible talents go at the end of the year. It is possibly the most interesting time for Call of Duty esports that I know of. And I hope this has given you some context into thinking about the 4v4 and how it should go down, because it's about to get wild. Anyway, this is just a quick thought video. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.